Thanks, appreciate it.
I'm a language coach.
Okay.
I'm an elite language coach at the world level, so I can get somebody to speak a language in a very short space of time.
Okay.
And the reason I came to US now, I'm going to be here for 3 months, is I want to personally work with as many and if possible high-profile people as I can to demonstrate the skill I have and the language acquisition ability that our company has, the technology, right? And from your point of view, like how could I approach getting into this world of NFL, NBA, like working with elite players, and what concern do you guys even have for speaking foreign languages? Like, I don't know, would it be interesting?
I don't think people have many concerns. I actually know a lot of my teammates that do try and learn a second language. I think it's really popular, actually. I bet there's about 10 guys right now in our locker room alone that are working on speaking a second language. And I would say to get into this space, a lot of people wonder, how do you get access to athletes? Like, A, it's connections, number one, but B, it's their circle. Who do they associate themselves? Who's their agent? Who's their marketing guy? Because those guys are gonna, they have trust, right? I told you that's, a lot of athletes don't have as much trust, right, with outside people. But if you get involved with someone they have trust with and built the rapport, you're going to get into that circle a lot quicker. If you DM an athlete, there's no trust there, right? Who are you to who am I? We don't know each other. I've never met you, right? You could be the best language coach in the world, you could be the worst. I have no idea. But if my agent calls me and tells me, I got the best language coach that you could ever want, need, whatever, sign me up. Because I trust my agent. Does that make sense?
And how do you get to the agent?
How do you get to the agent? Well, a lot of them are public. A lot of them are public. You can look up who's Derrick Henry's agent or who's, Derrick Henry's marketing director or who's whoever. And so the knowledge is pretty public who they have because they want to, right? They want to promote their athlete. So they're not going to hide who they are.
And I would bet that they probably get into similar type rooms that we do as high-level entrepreneurs. You just got to figure out how to get in the room.
If I may jump in on some of this, because I have a little bit of thoughts towards this. So the NFL just announced their global expansion market, right? So they're going to 29 different countries. They basically set up like almost like a farm system in there. And so say like, for the Cowboys, for instance, being in Dallas, we have headquarters in Mexico. So whenever these guys show some promise, it basically costs the team like little to almost nothing that they're basically getting sent from Mexico to be a part of the team, and they typically are sitting there playing in the preseason and the practice squad. So I was just looking this up. They announced it 3 days ago, and because of that, it's a new thing. They're probably going to start building out these departments within there. And so maybe if there's something there, because all these guys are coming in with some sort of language barrier, if you can get, find someone in the early stages of those departments, maybe that's a huge opportunity, because it's people from all over Asia, South America, and so.
Well, I'll give an example. Ryan and I met through a poker game with Sage, right? I was exhausted that night. I probably didn't really want to go to poker, but I was like, you know what? I'll go out and meet some guys. So thank you, Sage. First off, it's also taking time to go and say yes to opportunities, number one.
No doubt.
The other thing is taking opportunities to serve others first, right? Like one of the things that I say is a lot of you guys will leave here today, we'll go out tonight and party, and you'll talk to the same 5 people that you came into the room with. Most of you don't know this, Tyler's probably got more connections to Dallas Cowboy football players than anybody in this room. So if you would have met Tyler, you would know that if you asked him his story, what he did. He signs them in a lot of times for event gigs and things like that. So that's just an example of like, it's not a hey Ryan, give me your best connection. It's meeting these people, trust through little actions.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because I think if you can find out what people, their story. I mean, if Justin maybe never said about my real estate, I don't know if I would have maybe talked about it as much, but because he brought that out, I wanted to share it, right? And that's, I think, a super valuable thing is when you ask someone like, hey, what is your story? What is your thing? They start opening up, right? The more trust that they have. And I think you got a great point, Tyler, about the NFL program, and they're trying to expand. They're going to Spain this year. So there's opportunities.
And honestly, just ask your barber. They know all the players.
That's true.
Kat, you have a question?
Yeah, so a burning question, don't laugh, but
She's our wild card.
Yeah.
a little bit. Like, what do you guys actually, like, as NFL players, think of Taylor?
Taylor Swift.
Like, what do you guys, like, I know she, like, brought in, like, tons of new fans this year, like, honestly, like, she did.
No, I think the consensus is everyone hates it, to be quite frank. You got to think from a player's perspective, all you're trying to do every day for the whole season is play football. You don't want to worry about this side gig that's going on. And I think it's somewhat, the right perception is greater than reality in almost everything. And the perception is that she's taken away from the players, the game. Whether that's true or not, that's what's being perceived. So you got guys in the locker room that are like, we're here to play, Taylor Swift and her boyfriend, right? I mean, we're not here to play the Chiefs. I mean, that's just, even though it's a joke, it's real though, because these guys, it's their lives, it's their jobs. And so unfortunately, as the NFL is, they try to promote as much as they can with media and with stuff, and they're going to use this to make money, and that's fine. But I think players they don't want to deal with the drama, they don't want to deal with the outside stuff, especially with that. So.
Good question.
I think it's fuck Taylor.
No, she's great. She's great.
So, based off of the question that he was asking earlier, right? When you're in such an elevated platform and you have people calling you the best punter in the NFL, right?
Sure.
How do you stay grounded?
Oh man, my story. I mean, being told everything my whole life, like I go back to that, how I came up. Right? Like I was never given anything, ever. Any step of the way, I was never like, hey man, we want you. I was never like that. So the fact that I never had anything handed to me in that respect keeps me grounded today. Because I know where I came from. I fall back on my training, right? And I knew that experiences like I went through my freshman year where I kicked it straight up and it rolled and they scored a touchdown, I remember those things because those were big events. One of the things I didn't say was when I was, in the process of getting the job as an NFL punter, the second preseason game we had, I dropped a snap and I had to run for a first down. Now everyone else around me thought this was really cool, but I thought I just lost my job. So that event right there told me, hey, look, doesn't matter how good you are. You could have 100 days. Things are going to happen in your life that are going to keep you humble, and I just refer back to that. Especially now, like I feel like I put together 2 really good years in the NFL, right? I'm up for a contract next year, but I got hurt. And things like getting hurt and I was sitting in a bed, I couldn't walk. I could barely take a shower. Stuff like that is like, man, you are at the bottom again, and I got to work your way back up, and that's kind of just been my journey. So that's what's kept me grounded.
One more, a little bit more serious question. Kind of on the flip side of what he said, I know the media coverage, if you haven't been paying attention, is about you is pretty good, but you've been on the team with a lot of players who have had a lot of negative media coverage. How do you and your teammates keep your heads out of your ass and just keep moving forward?
I won't lie. I mean, people know what the media coverage is. There's a lot of people who know. I think the one thing that you have to do in order to avoid that is to just trust what you're doing. The more that you kind of give it up and you're like, you know what, that is what it is, that's when you start paying attention to what people are saying about you. The minute you could just be like, I want to focus on myself and what I'm doing and the journey that I'm taking, that's when you let it all go and you play freely. And I know a lot of guys like that. But on the flip side, I know a lot of guys that put a lot of stock into what is told about them. A lot of guys look up what they're being said. How did I do after the game? How did you feel you did after the game? Not how do you think someone else perceived how you did after the game. But it's hard to tell somebody that because that's just who they are. That's maybe what they believe. So I think as me, staying grounded is something that's, not looking at social media, not looking at all that stuff because there's always going to be, I know the guy's name who talks shit about me after every game. And he says, I don't know, maybe the guy just hates me or something, but I don't put as much stock. I just get it sent to me. He's like, dude, can you believe this guy keeps talking shit about you? Whatever. But I'm not going to take an interview when he's in the locker room, so it's just what it is. I think you just have to stay on your journey and not get caught up in someone else's, what they think of you.
Hey, Ryan. Up here.
Oh.
It's God's
So, a couple things for you, maybe you can help the audience a little bit and myself. So I think, success is found in mastering the fundamentals.
Absolutely.
I think athletes are elite at that. They are 100% elite at that. And you look at the Kobe Bryant stories and just things like that. It's like when his best basketball moves, he literally does the same thing he did in elementary school because it's a fraction of a hair one way or the other that makes a difference, right? It moves the needle 1,000 times. So maybe talk to us because I think it's human nature to get bored with the routine.
Yes.
We're always looking for a shortcut or the next shiny object. So how do you handle that? Because I'm sure as a punter, you have your routine.
Yes.
You do not deviate from your routine.
Yeah, I'll tell you a great thing that I learned very early on in sports that's carried with me throughout my entire career and my life. This may sound very cliche, and I'm sure you've seen plenty of pictures of it, but success isn't a straight line, right? And I learned it really quickly because I learned that in order to get better, you have to get worse. Again, that may sound very cliche, but I'll tell you, when I was training for punting, when I had worked tirelessly, I remember almost getting in fist fights with my father on the football field when I was in high school saying, your training doesn't work. It doesn't work. I suck. I keep sucking. And all of a sudden, right when I'd say that, I start getting better. And he'd never let me keep going and plateau. Every time that I got better than I was before, I'd go right back below. And it's embarrassing, right? No one wants to see you, out in the field, right? And they didn't want to see me not do well. But he knew that in the off season, when people weren't watching me, we'd just go in the garage and I'd punt into a net. And like I said, I think success isn't a straight line. And I think once you can accept getting worse before you can get better, you'll be successful. But unless you can accept that, right, and you can endure maybe the embarrassing periods of those, wow, maybe I'm learning. I don't need to be the best while I'm learning. I can open my mind up. I don't have to consider myself atop of someone else. Like, you can be humble enough to say, I'm learning. I may suck at doing this new thing, but eventually I'm going to get better. And once I've gotten to the point where I feel like I've maybe mastered or I need new information, I'm bored, let me learn something new. Let me try something different. Let me get worse doing something, and then I'll start getting better again. And the more you can do this, I had a coach tell me once, if you're good enough, long enough, someone's going to find you. And I was like, well, I want to be good now, right? I want to be good right now. I want someone to find me right now. And I didn't know that the longer I did this, the more chances I had to someone to find me. And eventually, I got opportunities where people did try to find me and did try to give me opportunities. But if I would have never came back from this experience, I would have never went up higher. So I think when you get bored, learn something new.
I try to phrase this in a question, but when we're business owners, we have, we try to get our employees to perform. I can't make them come to work. I can't make them show up.
Totally.
We either cut them just like football.
Totally.
You have kids. Kids are your kids. You can't just cut your kids. So.
Right. You can't cut your kids. You can try. You probably can't cut them.
When I was a kid, I was a musician, and you could be the best guitar player in your school.
Sure.
Cool. You could meet some girls and all that.
Yeah.
Now, you instantly get on your phone, and there's the best guitar player in the world. It's just every time you get on your phone. So I see my kids, they don't. It's almost like the social media, the ability to see talent at that level constantly. It's hard to motivate them to try something because it's like, well, I'll never get that level. I don't know.
It's mindset, I think.
How would you instill?
What
advice would you have on instilling that?
I think it's all mindset, right? If you look at that and you see the best guy in the world, do you say, I'm going after him? Or, he's too big, I don't want to go after him. I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to pivot, right? I think there's a mindset to that. Maybe instilling the journey rather than the result, right? You instill in them that this is a process. This is going to take a long time. My dad told me when I first started, he said, you're not going to be good in the first year, you're not going to be good the second year, you're not going to be good the seventh year. When you are good is when you're retired. Because it's never enough, right? You're never going to reach your peak and say, I made it, I'm here, right? It's the journey is continuous. If you can instill that the journey is more important than the result, they'll always chase the guy that's better than them. And throughout my journey, that's all I was doing. I enjoyed so much training. I trained so much. I enjoyed the process. I don't even love football. As crazy as that to say, I don't. I love the process. I love the journey. I love beating people out. I don't wake up every day and think, man, I love football so much. Like, I didn't even watch the NFL. My first NFL game was when I played it. The truth. It's the truth. And so I never went to an NFL game in my life. And all I wanted to do was play baseball. So when that dream ended, all I was cared about was that mindset of just beating the next person out. And every time in my life, somehow the person would magically appear that I had to beat out. So I would say there's levels to it. If they're just looking at the one guy at the top of the thing, it's funny, I had mentors that I had punted against and competed against when I got to the level. And it was crazy to think, wow, I got here, and then you look back at your journey, you're like, that's why I got here.
I love solving problems. So to me, the journey is kind of...
That's all it is.
Feeling that same concept.
That's all it is. And punting's very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people that maybe don't know how much goes into punting, but like the problems that come up with punting and training is extreme, because if you're off by a half an inch, the ball looks different. It's not like a quarterback where you sit back, then you throw a spiral every time. I mean, we can all throw a spiral, but how many of you can punt a spiral? Probably not many, right? And if you're off by a half an inch, it's going to look totally different than the next one. I tell people that all the time. Like, most people don't know, when I punt the ball going left, there's about a half-inch difference between a shank out of bounds and a bomb. That's it, a half an inch. And so I think that, like I said, in that process, when you have to problem solve, and that's the problem solving, I mean, we talk all the time about that. And the only way you can get there is doing it through the journey.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any peer mentors or mastermind group? And like, if you do, what's some of the best advice you have within your position group, team, or just the leader?
Yeah, I would say people I look up to is like D-Hop. One of the things I love about Derek and D-Hop, honestly, is the fact that they were able to do things behind the scenes, and they didn't need the light. They didn't need the recognition. And I looked up to that because I was like, man, I feel that, because I want to grind behind the scenes that no one sees what I'm doing. And all of a sudden they're like, how did Ryan get here? How did he get to this point? And I saw that because, DeAndre, like, all his businesses that he's been a part of, nobody really knows about unless he kind of promotes them a little bit, right? Or Derek does. And I find out, man, Derek's been involved in these community events so much, or he does these camps. And I'm like, that's someone I look up to in that regard. I've never really had like a punting mentor except for my dad and my family that has done it. But I guess in the league, you try to clean yourself to guys that have made it, and you could just see that they steady rise. Like, I never realized how much Derek trained in the offseason. I just thought Derek Henry was Derek Henry. And then I learned that he practices more than anyone else. And the perception is when I came in the league, people are like, Derek doesn't really practice at practice. And I was like, why not? Like, he's such a good athlete, whatever. And I didn't realize that Derek had trained so hard in the offseason that he was just getting his body ready to compete in the games. And so I looked up to that because I was like, that makes so much sense. Why is he going out there trying to kill himself in the practices when he already put in the work, right? Nobody saw it. He didn't promote it. But I was like, man, when it's time to play, it's time to play. So.
We got 2 or 3 minutes left, so if you guys got any last dying questions.
I just had a quick one. Like,
yeah.
What is it that you're looking for? What is it you need? What are you looking for?
In terms of just anything?
Like, I'm always like, if you're in a room, ask how the room could help you type thing. So
yeah. I mean, right now, we're about to get into the season. I obviously would love to expand my real estate, just connections, because I obviously love investing too. So I'm not just, in it for being a real estate agent, right? I'm trying to figure out the market. And so through that, I just want to build connections with people. Because the reality is, once I get into the season, I don't get to do as much. I don't have as much freedom, right? And so right now, as I have a little bit more freedom, one of the things that I guess I am looking for is just opportunities, right? And things that people have, they're willing to share knowledge with me about something. And that's kind of how Justin and I got connected, because Justin was willing to share his knowledge with me. And so that's really valuable to me, because all I want to do is see how opportunities could potentially help me, and to just evaluate whether or not I have enough time to go into that or not. So.
You need open house up on Sundays during NFL season?
Sure. Anytime you want. Anytime you want. I'm sure my referrals will be dished everywhere. So
So Ryan up here.
is that God again? Okay.
As you were talking about like opportunities, you're looking for things like that. Who's
Sure.
doing like your due diligence? Because you've already mentioned like a trust factor for NFL players. People tend to look at like NFL or pro players as like the bank sometimes, right?
That's absolutely.
Who's protecting you and making sure that due diligence is done?
I'd say my agent does a really good job, right? Vetting people out. You know, if I have somebody that comes to me with an opportunity or something, I always say, hey man, who do you know that maybe knows this person or whatnot? How can you verify that they're legit? And again, another thing is when you work with an athlete or work with someone, you almost immediately build some sort of a trust there with other athletes, right? Because now that you're associated with them, I'm friends with so-and-so, and I say, look, man, maybe he needs a painter, right? And I had the best experience in the world with a painter. Well, the guy sitting next to me in the locker trusts me that I'm going to do my job on the field. So he's going to trust that I'm going to give him the best painter in the world, right? And so that's kind of how the protection, I guess, goes in that realm is like you kind of start with who does your agent know, and then you just trickle it down to who else is associated with them.
So do you want to do more speaking gigs?
Whenever you want.
So everybody in the room knows somebody that's having that.
Yeah. I mean, I love speaking. Like I said, I love sharing my story with people. I feel like someone can take away, maybe not every experience I've ever had, but some of the experiences and maybe apply them in their life. Because I've certainly been able to look back and apply it in my life. And, being told no is eventually going to turn into a yes. So, whatever y'all want.
Last questions?
Yeah, I got one. Great. So, with us, right, a lot of stuff we can do to maintain work-life balance is by leveraging things up to kids. Like, that's what we're about.
Right.
In an industry like yours, where, you're constantly having to travel, you're constantly having to put in physical work, how do you maintain that work-life balance?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is extremely important is taking some time for yourself when you get busy. Like, you have to make a conscious effort to do that. And that could be reading. It doesn't have to be, you not improving your life or improving yourself, but I tend to, during the season, I love decompressing with my family after the game. I give myself a full 24 hours on a Monday to hang out with my family, see them, and that's kind of how I balance my life. And then the minute Tuesday hits, I get back on my job. And throughout the day, right, I take conscious efforts to, okay, if I'm working from 6:30 a.m. till 5 at night, right, when I come home, I got a routine. Another thing, I didn't even really talk about routine, but in the NFL, I learned this very early on from guys like Derek, right, is if you don't have a routine, you're never going to make it. Because your life's not consistent, it's all over the place, and you can't really figure out, you can't gather your thoughts. How are you going to play on Sunday if you can't figure out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? So I learned that from watching guys and seeing like, man, this guy literally goes in there every day and he does the same thing. He's out at the same time every day. He goes home, he cooks his meal, he goes to bed at this time, and he wakes up and he's in before everyone else. Why can't I do that? And so that's kind of how I've balanced that. I mean, having some time for yourself and diligently creating a routine really gives your life some structure and something to look forward to in your day. And and I've learned too, when the routine gets, maybe it's boring, change up your routine. Just have a new routine, but keep a routine in the whole time that you're doing it. And I think that creates a lot of balance. So.
Last one?
It better be better.
This one's from Jim. He's in the hotel.
Her husband.
Oh,
He's
great.
so bummed that he couldn't be here to meet you.
It's okay.
He wants to know
We'll meet him.
is leg day every day?
Leg day every day. Right now it's been right leg day every day. Some left leg, but yeah, no, it's really not actually. It's quite the opposite. Well, I'm going through rehab on my left leg right now, but,
You're not injured.
When I'm not injured, no, actually it's quite the opposite. I try to take care of my legs as much as I can. Because ultimately, like, what do I have more to gain than being consistent, right? All I want to do is now take care of my body to be consistent. I don't need to gain anything more, right? I have nothing more to necessarily gain in the regard of getting muscle, but like for consistency, that's invaluable. The more I take care of my body, the more consistent I can be.
Insurance?
Insurance, about looking at it right now for the right one.
Awesome. We'll do one more real fast. And then,
Next week I'm going to an event where Harrison Butker's speaking. And,
Yeah.
He's going to be sharing his spiritual life story. Do you have any spiritual life story that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have. I don't have necessarily a spiritual life story. I am a spiritual guy, but I'm not. I don't really have necessarily like a story about like, oh man. I do think though, and I kind of was alluding to it a little bit, was like, there's been people put in my life for reasons, right? And every obstacle I've come, every time I've hit my peak, I've always gone down after that and come right back up. And so, you know, that's kind of been something that I think God's impacted my life in that way and put people in my life to show me, hey man, like you said about being humble, that you're not reached your peak yet and you have more to gain, but you have to go through this, right, to get better. And so I do feel like it's been deliberate in my life. And like I said, I don't think it's necessarily like a story, but it is something that, you know, I've had to work through and grow with. And yeah, so.
I love your humbleness. It's been
thanks.
Really, really inspiring.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.